Book number 1 on the list is... It's what? Seriously? Really? Okay. Reggie here, your friendly neighborhood bodybuilder and comic book collector, and I want to welcome you to another one of my videos. In this video, we are going to count down the 10 most submitted books that have been sent in to CGC. As a reminder, this video is a leading indicator because the data contained in this video cannot be found anywhere else. I literally get this information directly from CGC before the data is put into the census. So again, this is a great way to figure out what it is that we as a community are actually sending in to be graded. And I do want to give a huge shout out to the sponsor of this video, HOT Comic. If you've never heard of HOT Comic before, I definitely encourage you to check them out. This is a great platform for buying and selling comics because they actually partner with small businesses and local comic shops to help them thrive in the digital age. As I mentioned, there's a link in the description. Click on it, head over and check out the inventory that they have available. With that said, let's get to the list. Number 10 on the list is the first appearance of Omega Red. I am specifically talking about X-Men issue number 4. And this book has showed up periodically on the list, driven by the speculation that Omega Red is going to be appearing in the MCU. And clearly that has not happened as of yet. Yet we still see this book on the list. Now, what's interesting is whether this book will fall off the list or whether there will be some renewed speculation now that the new X-Men animated TV series has been announced. My guess is that people are going to start to speculate that Omega Red is going to appear in this animated show, and thus this book is going to continue appearing on the list for the months ahead. Number 9 on the list is Venom Lethal Protector issue number 1. And this book is a wonderful book from the 90s that honestly just screams the 90s with that red hollow foil cover. Typically, when we talk about Venom, it is Amazing Spider-Man issue number 300 that gets all the attention. But this book is Venom's first solo series, and his sequel movie, Let There Be Carnage, did gross $90 million, so it makes sense that this book appears on the list. Technically, this book has been on the list a couple of times over the last 11 months. At present, 9.8 of this book have a 30-day sales average of $170 and a 1-year average of $155 according to Go Collect. Number 8 on the list is the first of 2 Spawn books in the top 10 and the first of 3 books on the list overall. We are, of course, talking about Spawn's Universe issue number 1. And I'll be honest, I am not at all surprised to see this book on the list. And I'm not surprised because it's Todd McFarlane. The Todd father does a wonderful job of using social media to get his fans excited about the projects that he's working on. And when he does it, his fans will come out to support whatever project he happens to be working on. So I'm not surprised that this book is on the list in any way, shape, or form. And honestly, I expect to see this book on the list for a couple of more months as we move forward because there's a lot of copies out there. I think this was a really well-selling comic for Image, and I have a feeling that more copies are going to find their way into CGC in the coming months. Number 7 on the list is a personal favorite of mine. It is X-Men issue number 1 from 1991. This is a fantastic book that I remember reading back in the day in real time. I literally was going to the comic shop to pick this book up and thoroughly enjoy reading it. The artwork, the story, all of that stuff just screams the 90s, and it screams my childhood, and it may also resonate with a lot of other folks out there as well. Unfortunately, with the data associated with this book, it is hard for me to tell which of the connecting covers is actually being sent into CGC because they were all basically released at the same time. so it's hard for me to know which one. Arguably, it could be either the Magneto cover or it could be the Cyclops and Wolverine cover. Either one of those are incredible covers, so it would make sense that those are actually going in. I will tell you that this book was heavily printed back in the day. So if you have an opportunity to pick up a copy of it, I would recommend, if you can, to get the newsstand version. Again, because it was heavily printed for the direct market, there are a lot fewer of them out there for the newsstand. And I do not know at present whether there is a price difference between the two, but in the future, maybe there will be a price difference. Again, partly because the newsstands are a little harder to find. So if you can snag one, I definitely encourage you to pick them up. And potentially we will see the value of these books actually start to creep up. At present, by and large, you can actually get a 9.8 copy of this book for less than $200. But with the recent announcement of the Disney Plus streaming show featuring the X-Men, we could see some movement in these books on the horizon. Number 6 on the list clearly has some staying power, and I say that because this book has literally been on the list for the last 11 months. Every single month that I've received this data from CGC, we have seen the first appearance of Carnage on the list. We are, of course, talking about Amazing Spider-Man issue number 361. At present, there are more than 22,500 copies of this book on the CGC census. There are roughly 4,700 copies of this book at a 9.8 with an average sales price of $995. Based upon the data from Go Collect, this book appears to be on the downward trend, as it shows a 90-day average of $830 and a 30-day average of $688. While the sales have been cooling off, it will be interesting to see if submissions actually slow down. Again, this book has been on the list every single month for 11 months. There are a lot of copies out there, and I don't know if the submissions will actually slow down now that we have the Carnage Venom movie in the rearview mirror. So this is one that we need to keep our eye on, because I will be keenly interested to see what happens with this book. But this could also be a great time to pick up a copy, right? As the prices are going down, this could be a book that you might want to pick up if you're a huge Carnage fan. If you've been waiting on the sidelines, now could be a time to jump on board. Number 5 on the list is Moon Knight issue number 1, volume 8 from 2021. And I will tell you that I am pleased to see this book on the list, and I'm pleased to see it for several reasons. I actually read some of these early issues of volume 8, and it's not bad. I'm not the biggest Moon Knight fan, but I honestly enjoy reading some of these stories. The other thing that I will tell you is that the Moon Knight fans are excited. They are excited that Moon Knight is finally getting his opportunity to come to the forefront. And just recently, we were treated to, I guess, a first look of the Moon Knight series that is going to be debuting on the Disney Plus streaming show. And honestly, I have more questions than I have answers at this point, but that is kind of sort of par for course when you're talking about Moon Knight. There's very little in the way of sales data on this book. At present, there have been a handful of sales of 9.8s with an average sales price of $73. I glanced on hipcomic.com, the sponsor of this video. I was on the site earlier today and noticed that there were a couple of copies of cover A, as well as several of the variants for issue number 1 available as well. So if you're interested, you may want to head over there and check out the inventory, because some of those books might actually still be available. Number 4 on the list is another Moon Knight book, but this one is the original. We are talking about Moon Knight issue number 1 from 1980. At present, there are roughly 5,600 copies of this book on the census, with roughly 900 of them at a 9.8. At just about each grade, this book is selling below its Go Collect fair market value, but above its 1-year average, which could mean that there is some potential left in this comic. It will be interesting to see if people continue to submit these books in the coming months, as the Moon Knight TV series is set to be released at some point in 2022. I personally have a couple of copies, high-grade copies, that I am thinking about sending in to CGC, and that price at a 9.8 is an attractive one because I don't have a huge amount of money into these books. So we will see what the future holds, and I honestly am looking forward to seeing this Moon Knight series. Again, the trailer kind of confused me a little bit, but I think that is on purpose. And this 6-part series that they're going to be releasing in 2022 is one that I am honestly excited about. Number 3 on the list is another Todd McFarlane book. This one is the original Spawn issue number 1 from 1992. This book has appeared on the top 20 list for 9 of the last 11 months. For a book that was heavily printed, as this one was, there are just over 15,000 copies of it on the census. The most abundant grade is the 9.8 with roughly 8,000 copies on the CGC census. This grade at a 9.8 has a 30-day average sales price of $242, which is just above its fair market value of $240. The really interesting thing is that there are 69 9.9s on the census, 2 of which have been sold this year. The first sold in March for $8,000 and the second sold in April for $6,000. I mean, that's a pretty big delta between those 2 books. But again, I'm surprised at the relatively low number on the census, and then at the same time, I'm surprised that there are 69 copies at a 9.9 on the list that are going for some crazy amount of money. It'll be interesting to see what happens with this book and some of the other Spawn books as we move into the future. Number 2 on the list is a mystery book, and I don't mean in terms of genre. It is literally a mystery book. We do know that this comic is an exclusive cover for Spider-Man issue number 30. I do not, however, know what the cover actually looks like. Why? Because this book is an exclusive offering from the BAM box, and this is a mystery subscription service that has yet to reveal the actual cover to its membership, much less to the public. And I actually reached out to them trying to maybe get a photo and to understand what was going on, and they were super tight-lipped about this, but it appears that this book was announced back in September, and I guess they bundled up a ton of copies and sent them over to CGC to actually have them be graded, and given how many they sent, it actually made the list in the second spot. So we're going to have to stay tuned to see what this cover actually looks like, because again, I don't really know. Number 1 on the list actually boggles my mind, and it boggles my mind because it is a facsimile edition of a comic. We are, of course, talking about Ultimate Fallout issue number 4 facsimile edition. This book has made the list, and when I dug into the data, I can tell you that the census and sales data are both really light for this book. There appear to have been 7 valid sales of this book in October and November, ranging from $7.50 to a high of $100 with an average price of $51. The most recent sales in mid-November have been on the lower end of that range. I use the word valid a few moments ago because there has been some controversy regarding the facsimile edition being confused for the real version of Ultimate Fallout issue number 4. And it may have been this confusion that has prompted people to actually send in facsimile copies of this book. And it'll be really interesting to see whether people continue to send in the facsimile edition now that maybe there's more awareness and maybe people aren't confusing the facsimile for the real book, as evidenced by some of the sales that we are actually seeing. So this is again one that we're going to have to keep an eye on. Typically at this point, I offer up a couple of bonus books, but honestly, there's no additional surprises, not really, outside of the ones that we've already spoken about. I will, however, tell you that there is one DC book that managed to make the list. The list was primarily dominated by Marvel and Image, but DC had one representative, and it was Nice House on a Lake issue number 1. You might also be wondering what the other Spawn book was that made the list. It is King Spawn issue number 1. With that said, I am going to wrap this video up, but before I do, I want to again thank the sponsor, HIP Comic. They are linked down in the description. Check them out. If you haven't yet subscribed to the channel, I want to encourage you to do so. That way you don't miss out on any of the content that I release here from the channel. And if you need to reach out to me, you can do so on Instagram at Regie Collects. Take care.